I'm Jemima. Let's talk about JavaScript. Yay! So the title of my talk is I Can't Believe It's Not JavaScript. Basically, what I'm going to be showing you is some demos and features that I built that make you think, what? That's not JavaScript? But it's not. So let's get into it. A little bit about me. So like I said, my name is Jemima Abu. I am a front-end developer, self-taught. I'm also a Google developer expert, a Microsoft MVP, and a certified professional in Accessibility Core Competencies. Basically, what that means is I was a gifted child growing up, and I'm just constantly seeking validation. So this is where we are now. If you're looking, you can find me online anywhere at Jemima Abu. So that's Twitter, LinkedIn. If you want to tell me how much you like my pants, they have pockets, by the way. Feel free to tweet me there. All right. Let's get into it, JavaScript. So I came here today to a React conference to tell you why you shouldn't be using JavaScript, because I feel this is the best place for that. But before I start telling you why you shouldn't be using JavaScript, let's talk about what JavaScript actually is. How did we get here today? So in the beginning, there was the world, and the world was a simple place. We had websites that looked like this. You also had websites that looked like this, but that's not the point. I see we're all Vaporwave fans. Yeah, it was a fun time. But the point is, before JavaScript, all websites were static. What this meant was the web didn't do much interactivity. You would display a blank page to a user, and if they wanted to do anything else on that page, they would need to receive another response from the server. So this is basically what the web communication looked like back then. If, for example, I wanted to submit a form, I would fill out the form, that page would be submitted to the server, and then the server would return an error. Now, this meant that it was kind of slow, kind of glitchy, and so there was a company called Netscape Navigator. What they wanted was a way to prevent all of that server communication. They wanted a way to handle doing the interactivity on the web itself, something called client validation. So now instead of waiting for the server to give a response, you can just find that information on the front end itself. And so Netscape, what did they do? They contracted a developer called Brendan H., and he built this fun little language called JavaScript in 10 days. And I feel like when I heard that, I was like, that makes sense. JavaScript of all languages would have been built in 10 days. So that brings us to where we are today. Originally, when JavaScript was created, it was intended to be this language that supported the web. But now we've reached the point where JavaScript is running the web. So now you have your React websites where you can't launch these websites without using JavaScript at all. Why is this a problem? Well, it leads us to something that I like to call dependency gate. And I'm going to tell you a story of the day one programmer destroyed the internet by deleting one package from NPM. I feel like you guys are React developers, so you might have heard of this before, but if you haven't, let me spill the tea and tell you the deets. So it was a sunny day, or maybe it wasn't sunny, in March 2016, right? There was this developer called Azure. Azure used to publish programs on NPM. And if anyone is familiar with NPM, you know they're not exactly picky with what you can publish on there. You can put all your crap, nobody cares. So Azure had this little package that was called Kik, that's K-I-K. Now at that time, there was also a social media called Kik, K-I-K. So this social media platform, they go to Azure and they're like, bruh, our name is copyrighted, you can't be using that. Azure is like, F you guys, you can't tell me what to do. Kik goes to NPM. They're like, NPM, tell Azure to take his package down. NPM goes to Azure. You're like, Azure, take your package down. Azure is like, okay, if I'm taking my package down, I'm taking all my packages down. NPM is like, we don't care. So Azure takes all his packages down. And then for some reason, 2 hours later, I don't know the time, I just made that number up. A few hours later, we have these websites crashing. Spotify is down, Facebook is down. Ironically, Kik is down. And everyone's like, what's the problem? So now when you're running your React website, all of a sudden you're getting an issue, left pad can't be found. People at Meta are freaking out. They're like, what's left pad? Turns out Azure also had another package on NPM that was called left pad. What did left pad do? It was like 6 lines of code, and all it did was add characters before a string. Why on earth you need that as a package, I do not know. But somebody had that as a package, and somebody else had that package in their package, until eventually that package was installed in React. So now when React websites are trying to run, you're getting this error because left pad no longer exists. This is what we call dependency gate. So now because you've installed all these packages and all these random modules that you don't know where they come from, one tiny package in that installation you have being destroyed meant that your entire code couldn't run anymore. This is a problem because, how many people here actually know what's in their node modules? When you run npm run, do you actually know what you're running? No, you don't, right? Exactly. So the fact is, when you're installing these random carousels or sliders or add to packages, what are you actually putting into your code? You don't know. So the goal of this talk is not to tell you to stop using JavaScript, because let's face it, we're well past that point by now. The point is to reduce JavaScript dependencies in that we do not need as many packages or libraries as we think we do. And I'm going to prove that by showing you some fun little demos. This is the stage we're trying to get to with our web development. We want to take it back to the days of when HTML and CSS were used for content and JavaScript was used for functionality. So let's get into it. HTML and CSS to the rescue. I'm going to show you some demos and how I'll build them using HTML and CSS. So the first up we have is a theme switcher. It's a simple toggle. You click a button, it takes you from light mode to dark mode. Nothing fancy, right? So let's see how we would build this using HTML and CSS. You guys will have to bear with me because I'm not very tech savvy, so I don't know how to put code in my slides. So I will be linking to CodePen. I'll be switching back and forth. But it'll be fun, yay! Okay, let's see. Woo! So this is our theme switcher with JavaScript. Let me zoom into that code a bit so you can see this fine. So I click my button here. It switches, magic, right? Love that. Now let's see what happens when we try that without using any JavaScript. So now this is the same theme switcher. Let me drag all this up. Look, man, no JS. But it still works, what? Woo! So, can you believe it's not JavaScript? No, like the talk, right? So let's take a look at what we're actually doing here. So we're gonna go back to this code. So this is how we write this code using JavaScript, right? We're checking if the input has been clicked. If the input is clicked, we're giving it a class name, and then that class name is what is handling all the dark and light theme switching. This is how we write that same code using only CSS. What we use here is called the has pseudo selector. Has is something that lets us target a specific element within a parent element. So all I'm saying in this code is if the body element has an input checkbox with the ID of theme switcher that is checked, apply the dark mode styling. So now let's go back to our CSS here. Is that our CSS? It's this one. And we can see the code here. So this is basically everything that is handling what is actually styling our dark mode. All we're doing is targeting the input switcher, and when that works, we give it the style. And then we can go back to our slides, yay. And the has pseudo selector is also fully available everywhere, meaning that this is something you can use in your code right now. This is an issue that people run into with new web features a lot, is because you hear about something cool and be like, oh great, when can I start using it? And they're like, 2029? It's not available yet. I'm like, why are you telling me about it? Well, I'm telling you about has because it is available, so you can start using it whenever you like. Yeah, so the second point is that in terms of when we think about a theme switcher, right, you might think that, oh, but I still need to handle like storing the user's preference in local storage or all those other things. And yes, that's perfect because that is when you would use JavaScript. So the point here is that we're not trying to remove JavaScript completely. What we're saying is, do you actually need JavaScript as much as you think you do? So for handling local storage and everything, sure, you need JavaScript to save user preferences. But for just updating the colors, maybe try has. Okay. What do we have next? We have an accordion. I love a good accordion. I'm sure we're all fans of accordions here too. So let's see how we build this accordion without using any JavaScript. But first, we'll see how we build it with using JavaScript. Okay, this is our JavaScript accordion. The use, you click it, it toggles content. Nothing amazing there. But now let's see how we'll do that without using any JavaScript at all. Once again, no JavaScript up my sleeves. And it still works, yay! Yeah, clearly I'm very hyped by my own demos, so let's have fun with that. But let's see what we're actually doing in the, under the engine here. So now this is how we build this accordion using JavaScript. It's like we're toggling content. If you're using React, it's a lot of if checked, blah, blah, blah. This is how we build the same accordion without any JavaScript at all. This is our HTML element called details. And details are basically inbuilt accordions with HTML. So these are semantic elements that render in the exact same way that an accordion would render. And once again, details also fully supported, can also be used in your code right away. So before we move on, let's also take let's take a look into some added advantages that the details semantic element has over using JavaScript. So let's go back to this accordion here. So now with this accordion here, if I inspect this element, let's see. Wow, that is tiny text. Okay, is that better? Yeah, DevTools, huh? Great stuff, love them. Okay, so if I inspect the element here, and that thing that DevTools does that's also cool is that you can see your accessibility tree. So this basically breaks down your content into like how a screen reader would identify it, basically. So the content on the right is how a screen reader would be looking at this accordion. So let me zoom that in a bit more because I have terrible eyesight and I can't see anything. There we go. So this is our accordion here. This is the button that we click for it. But one thing you notice is that there's no actual movement on that page. So there's nothing telling the screen reader that, oh, this thing has been opened, or this thing has been toggled, or there's new content that's being displayed on the page. But now let's look at our HTML accordion instead. And then instead of using the accessibility tree, I'll show you another fun DevTool accessibility, which is the accessibility pane, which is something down here. If we inspect this, you're gone. If we inspect this, you see that it kind of groups your accordions together. So here you already have your focused and expanded set to true. But in your JavaScript, you didn't have that. Basically, what that means is that because you're using details, because you're using a semantic element, you already have inbuilt browser support for all your accessibility needs. Another fun feature that details has over using a regular JavaScript accordion, and I'll just show you that real quick. Once again, we jump back to JavaScript. If, for example, I had hidden content on this page and I wanted to search something, no. How do you spell armadillo? Is it with like an R? Arma? Is that it? Yeah, it's right. Okay, great. So now there's this content in this accordion here. So if I was searching for that on the page, what I'm saying is that this is giving me 1 out of 1, meaning that it knows that content is on the page, but it can't actually tell me where exactly it is. But then if I go to my HTML accordion and I do the same thing, you see that the accordion pops open automatically by itself. So this is another added advantage that Details has over the JavaScript accordion. Because of this inbuilt browser support, you can also support things like finding content and automatically toggling the accordion when it's open. Let's look at one more cool accordion feature before we move on. So let's say I had an error in my JavaScript, and honestly, when do I never have an error in my JavaScript? So let's say we have fail.run. Right? So now this is something that's breaking my JavaScript code. What's happening? My accordion isn't working anymore. So now users cannot access this content that I have within this accordion. But if I go back to HTML, first of all, there's no JavaScript to have any error. But let's say I had no CSS at all. The accordion still works as intended because the accordion is a HTML element. So what that means is, regardless of if you have slow internet or if there was an error in your script somewhere, your user is not losing access to the information that is within that accordion. So accordions, super cool, get on it. Let's move on. We also have an accordion demo with auto close. This is just showing you how, if you wanted to like, you know, sometimes you want to, when one accordion opens, you want to close another one. So you could also do that using only HTML. So let's take a quick look. Sorry, I'm trying to be quick because I wasted too much time setting up my slides, so now we're behind schedule. So this is the same thing as with the HTML only accordion. You click one accordion and the other one closes automatically. So let's take a look at how we're doing that. Ew, that was a JavaScript, by the way. Ugh, gross, hate it. This is the HTML. Oh my God, slay, love. Okay, so this is, if you wanted your accordions to automatically close by themselves, you just need to give them a name attribute. Once you've grouped them in the name, it means once one accordion is toggled, the other one closes automatically. So these are pretty cool stuff. Let's look at a third feature that is also super cool in CSS. Auto height animation. Now, anyone that writes CSS knows that trying to animate height auto has been the bane of our existence since time immemorial. But the thing is, because CSS doesn't allow you animate from height 0 to height auto, a lot of times you have to use JavaScript to get the actual height and then animate that with CSS. Well, what if I told you you didn't need to use JavaScript for that anymore? Ta-da! It's very slow, so wait. Ta-da! Ooh, right? So smooth. So basically, there is a new CSS feature that means you can now move from height 0 to height auto without any JavaScript at all. One thing you will notice, though, is that this is a GIF and not a demo because, of course, it's not available yet because all the best stuff aren't. But we'll talk about it anyway, so you guys know, and when it does become available, you can start using it. So if you want to animate your height in CSS, we do that using a feature called calc size. Calc size is basically the CSS equivalent of getting like the client offset height or any of that. So what it does is just says set the height as the calculated size of auto, and then it allows you get the actual thing. Obviously, calc size is not fully supported everywhere yet. You can use it in like Chrome Canary or Chrome Beta, but for actual production, not yet. We also have the next feature, which is starting style. So starting style is specifically for when you have elements that they don't animate easily. So this is when you have like disability none on an element. So if you're animating anything that starts from disability none, it usually doesn't work well. Starting size is something that you can use to, starting style is something you can use to prevent that, because it basically says this is what that element should start from. And then lets you animate it easier. Of course, it's not supported either. Boo, let's move on. We have a modal. I'm gonna be speed running through these now. But I'm very generous. So not only am I giving you one JS alternative, I'm giving you two, because I like you guys, you're a cool crowd. So yeah, let's see how we would build this. So this is our modal that was built using JavaScript, right? It's a simple modal. Hello, React Miami, that's you. It's a simple modal, you click it, things pop up. This is the JavaScript version of that. Can you see how many lines of code that is? That makes me want to throw up. I hate that. So let's look at if we were using HTML instead. All right, look at this beautiful emptiness right here. Love that. And it still works, yay! All right, let's quickly look at it with CSS. I will explain both of them later, but I'm just trying to prove my point. Once again, no JavaScript under the hood, but it still works with CSS. All right, now let's look at the two implementations for this HTML versus CSS option. JavaScript. HTML. Woo! This is how we create a modal using only HTML. We use that attribute that is called popover. Popover is a new attribute, well not new, but it's a fun attribute in HTML that lets you define something as a modal. And with the popover attribute, you also have your popover target, and that's what gives you the popover controller. So basically, if we go back to that HTML real quick, which one was it? This one? We can see that we have our modal here that has the value of popover. The role dialog is just for accessibility reasons. Popover is the one handling all the work here, and then we have our popover target here that actually toggles between displaying it and closing it. So real quick, just to show you how the actual HTML looks. Give me a sec. All right, so now this is the HTML without any CSS. So what you see is that the popover still appears here. It doesn't have any of the styling that we gave it before, so it's not like the width or anything. But in terms of actually toggling the content, the modal appearing when clicked and then closing when the modal is blurred, popover does all of that automatically. So if you are building modals right now and you're using JavaScript to do that, stop immediately, delete it. Move over to popover because that's where it's at. And don't you want to be cool? Okay, let's move on. This is the same modal, but using CSS. So with the CSS one, it uses a slightly different feature, and that feature is the target feature, which is this one here. What target does is that it allows you style specific links, but only certain types of links. So it's the href link specifically. That's not what I meant. It's this thing, you know when it has like a hashtag in front of it? So it is section. CSS target lets you style that section. So if anything that had the modal ID was active, I would use CSS target to get that. So it could be things like just styling an active link. I just put it in the modal because I was tired of building demos at this point, but you get the point, right? So CSS target, another super cool feature that you could use. So popover, newly available since 2025, can be used in production right now. And this is the one I was talking about with the CSS target that we could start using right away. Also fully available, get on it, something cool. Modal demo with animation. I'm not going to show you that. You're not missing much. It's just like the animation scaling in and scaling out. What I will do, though, is I will give the links to the slides. So if you do want to check out the modal demo with the animation, feel free to do that after. But yeah, the other feature I did want to talk about was popover open. Because when you're using popover, it also gives you certain added features that you can use, such as popover open, which is styling the popover when it opens. You have backdrop, which is like styling the overlay, so you don't need to create your own custom overlay. These are just things to keep in mind. Oh, speed running through this. Okay, last demo, promise. Super cool animating elements on slide. This was something that I thought was really cool because whenever you think of sliding animation or anything that has to do with scrolling, you always think of JavaScript, you think of event listeners or intersection observers, but now we don't have to live like that anymore. We are free. So let's take a look at how this would work with JavaScript. This is our animation on scroll with JavaScript. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, ew, right? That's what I said. Oh, hate it. And look how many lines of code that is. 40 lines of my life I'll never get back, more like. So let's look at the CSS version. Once again, no JavaScript because we hate that here. And yet, what? Isn't that cool? You know the drill at this point. Woo! All right, so this is the CSS that doesn't use any JavaScript at all, and it's freaking amazing is what it is. Another thing I did want to show you in terms of performance or just speed is one thing you'll notice with this JavaScript thing is if I scroll really quickly to the bottom, it takes quite a while for the actual animation to come in. But with CSS, it's a lot more instant than that. So the CSS version is actually more performant than the JavaScript version in that the user's scrolling speed doesn't really affect it. So quickly, let's take a look at what the actual scroll animation. Can you look at that? What is that? Ugh. Disgusting. Beautiful, love it. Okay, this is the exact same scroll animation that we just saw using CSS only. What we're using here is something called the animation timeline. Animation timeline is a new CSS property that allows you either specify a view timeline or a scroll timeline. A view timeline links the animation to the element being in view, while the scroll timeline links the animation to the scroll bar. This is all technical stuff. I'm sure there's a blog post somewhere that explains it. That's not my job. I'm just here to tell you about it. So let's move on. Of course, they are both limited availability because all the cool things are. But yeah, I'll just show you this demo real quick and then we can call it. Okay, so this is basically how the view timeline works. All it does is we're assigning an animation. When the element comes into view, apply that animation, and then stop it at a certain point. So this is, if we go back to this code here, you see I have my animation range at entry 25%, cover 50%. All I'm saying is run this animation when the element is 25% visible and stop it when it's 50% visible. Okay, if you want to learn more about scroll-driven animations, you can check it out here on this website, scroll-drivenanimations.style. Like I said, I will be sharing the links to these, so if you wanted to check them later, you can just go through the slides. And then usually at the end of my talk, I usually give resources about where people can learn more about this stuff, but because the web is constantly changing, I can't give you like links to, oh, go to this website or anything. What I will do is give you people to check out. So these are 4 people that I think are doing very cool stuff in the CSS space. Ona is constantly writing about the latest changes coming to CSS because she works on the Chrome dev team. So if there's anything new in CSS, she's like the gossip girl for CSS. You'll probably hear about it from her first. We have Bramos. Bramos does really cool CSS technical stuff. So he's the one that built that scroll-driven website I was showing you recently. So if you like the nerdy aspect of CSS, we definitely recommend checking that out. Jay also does, frankly, I think that guy is a magician or a dark wizard because the thing that he does with CSS should be illegal. He does some of the coolest CSS implementations I've ever seen. Definitely recommend checking them out. And then finally, Adam Argyle, really cool guy, really passionate about the web, constantly sharing stuff about CSS. So these 4 people, their blogs or their Twitters, I'll definitely recommend checking them out if you want to keep in touch with what's new in the CSS space. And I'm done. Woo! All right.